Hi friends, and happy Monday. This week we're exploring Death Valley National Park. Now, if you've been joining me on my adventures for a while, you know I love this national park, but Death Valley has been completely closed to the public since the park was hit by remnants of Hurricane Hilary and received over 2.2 inches of rain on August 20th. Now, this much rain the park generally gets in a year, and it marked the all-time record for the most precipitation in a single day here. Flooding damaged much of the park, but after the longest Death Valley closure in the park's history, it has just reopened. So let's explore and see what the park is looking like right now. If you're new here to Flying Dawn Marie, welcome. As a travel blogger, every Monday I take you on a new adventure. I share full detailed blog posts on my website, flyingdawnmarie.com, and my YouTube videos bring you along with me for a virtual visit. So make sure to turn on notifications, like and subscribe, and let's explore together. It's wonderful that Death Valley is reopening in time for the cooler fall months, which are the perfect time to explore the park. But it's important to note that Death Valley is larger than the states of Rhode Island and Delaware, with over 1,400 miles of roads. Now, much of the park is still closed due to the storm damage. So today I'm sharing the current conditions as the park reopens in October. As the park reopened Sunday, October 15th, 2023, the only ways to enter are California State Route 190 from the west via the 136 just before Lone Pine, or from the east via Death Valley Junction. All other park entrances currently remain closed. On opening day, I made my way to the park via the 136 just south of Lone Pine, and it was fascinating to see the long, dry Owens Lake filled with water along the way. A great first stop on our adventure is the Eastern Sierra Visitor Center, located where the 395 meets the 136 just south of Lone Pine. Here you can get some of the most up-to-date information on Death Valley, including road closures, campgrounds, as well as the surrounding area like the Mojave and Mount Whitney, before continuing on your journey to Death Valley. From the front of the Visitor Center, there are some beautiful Mount Whitney views, and make sure to get any last-minute Death Valley information you might need here, because this will be one of the last places you're guaranteed cell service on your journey. The drive along the 136 heading to the 190 starts off relatively easy, but soon you start to see areas of slight road damage and road construction as you head towards Keeler and the lower Centennial Flat to the south. Less than 30 miles from Panamint Springs, you'll be surprised by what you see along the side of this drive, thanks to the recent wet weather. The drive along the 190 is really special right now. Not only do we have the vibrant yellow rubber rabbit brush, which you're seeing all along Highway 395 with the fall colors, we have a bit of a super bloom in the distance with the Joshua trees here. It's a rare sight indeed to see the desert globe mallow filling this landscape with its rich apricot colors in late October, but it's a welcome sight as you enjoy your drive toward Death Valley. Before reaching the Darwin Hills, you come across your first one-lane traffic stop, which will take you through the Panamint Springs area. As we're heading towards Panamint Springs, we're hitting one of the stop points. Now, there can be delays of up to an hour here, so be prepared to hang out and enjoy the views. With the current wait times, feel free to get out of your vehicle, stretch your legs, maybe take a picture at the Death Valley National Park sign. Just make sure to pack your patience. We waited for about a half an hour before we received our escort to start on through the Panamint Valley area. The pilot vehicle led us around the winding canyon road and along the beautiful scenery. However, it was evident that multiple spots here had suffered damage and the cliffside had crumbled just inches from the road in different areas along this drive. I had heard rumors that the Father Crowley Vista Point would be opening, but both Sunday and Monday the viewpoint was completely closed as we were escorted by our pilot vehicle here. While I was aware I would encounter significant road damage on my Death Valley journey, I was absolutely shocked to see the road leading to Darwin Falls along the Darwin Hills area completely destroyed. With the road here crumbled, I can only imagine how long it will be until this area is accessible to park guests. As I'm sure you can imagine from seeing the completely destroyed roadway, Darwin Falls is inaccessible currently, but I do have a full blog post and YouTube video on this spot. I'll make sure to link it in the description of this video because it really is a treasure and a unique oasis inside Death Valley National Park. Continuing along the 190, you soon hit Panamint Springs. While we were still escorted in this area, Panamint Springs was open and offering food, water, lodging, restrooms, and gas for guests who may need it on their way into Death Valley. Our escort continued across the entire Panamint Valley up into the Panamint Range, but it ended before Town Pass and Jayhawker Canyon. The views were absolutely spectacular, and the roads were relatively maintained. However, there were a few areas we were grateful for our guide, and there was definitely only one lane available in spots. So many roads inside of the park are closed, including roads into and out of Death Valley National Park, such as the Trona Wilderness Road to the Panamint Valley Road. And it's important to note that driving off the designated road is always prohibited inside Death Valley National Park, but it is all the more important right now with the incredible road damage and damage to the natural resources here from Hurricane Hilary. The most common cause of death inside Death Valley National Park is single car accidents, so it's always important to stay alert and slow down, but even more so now with the rugged, rough road conditions. Always watch for traffic signs and workers because the park will be undergoing major road rehabilitation for the foreseeable future, so there will be multiple areas inside of the park where you'll have to stop and wait for one-lane traffic. Driving along the 190, you can see Lake Manly filled with water, a truly unique sight here in Death Valley. One of the few unpaved roads that is currently open inside Death Valley National Park is Mosaic Canyon Road. This rough gravel road covers just over 2 miles and leads to one of my favorite hiking trails. Mosaic Canyon is a wonderful adventure for hikers. You're almost immediately greeted by the winding narrows here, and the tall, jagged slot canyons are fascinating to explore. The full hike is just about 4 miles round trip before heading back to State Route 190. If you're wondering about the road conditions along Mosaic Canyon Road, while it is considered a bumpy gravel road, it was absolutely nothing my Kia Sportage couldn't handle. In fact, it was a fun and relatively easy drive here. Back on the 190, the drive is relatively quiet to Stovepipe Wells Village. Here you can stop by the ranger station, and the Stovepipe Wells campground is open. You also might want to consider gassing up here before continuing on your Death Valley adventure. Our next Death Valley stop is the Mesquite Flat Sand Dunes, which are currently open. While a few areas of the road are bumpy getting here, the parking lot is clear and wide open. There's no official trail, so you can head out and explore the sand dunes, and I do have a full blog post and YouTube video on these incredible sand dunes here in Death Valley. I'll link in the description of this video. Directly after the sand dunes, you'll pass Devil's Cornfield and the turnoff for Scotty's Castle Road, which is completely closed. In fact, the castle has been undergoing flood damage repairs for several years now. Another favorite spot of mine inside the park, which you cannot reach, is the Salt Creek Interpretive Trail. The entire road is closed off. In fact, flooding damage was so severe it actually rerouted Salt Creek entirely. I do have a full blog post on this wonderful area though, so if you'd like to see what it looked like before the flooding damage, I'll link it in the description of this video. Just before Furnace Creek and the split with the 190 and Badwater Road, consider stopping at Harmony Borax Works. The interpretive trail is open and it is a fascinating place to visit. I have an entire blog post and YouTube video on this area. I'll link it in the description below so you can check that out. The next spot you'll stop is the Furnace Creek area. Now here you'll find multiple campgrounds, lodging hotels, and the Furnace Creek Visitor Center where you can check in for your national park visit. On opening day, October 15th, it was nearly 100 degrees here, so just be aware, fall does not mean cold air just quite yet in Death Valley. Inside the visitor center is a wonderful area with incredible interpretive panels and history about Death Valley. It's definitely worth a stop. You'll also get the most up-to-date information on which campgrounds are open and closed, along with which roads are currently open and closed here. And the map of what roads are closed is really fascinating to see. You get a taste of how vast Death Valley is and how much damage was done due to Hurricane Hilary. The only thing I wouldn't recommend is grabbing fuel here. Furnace Creek fuel this week was $8.20. That's highway robbery if you ask me, so stick to Stovepipe Wells or Panamint Springs. The ranch at Death Valley and the inn at Death Valley are both located in the Furnace Creek area, and if you're looking for a luxurious stay on your Death Valley trip, I'd recommend either of them. The views truly are an oasis, and if you need to cool down, pop by the ice cream parlor to get a sweet treat here. Heading out of the Furnace Creek area and continuing on the 190, you will hit a few bumpy patches along the road, but soon you'll also reach Zabriskie Point, which is open and always a crowd favorite. I have a full Zabriskie Point blog post and YouTube video. It is definitely worth checking out. There's a reason this is one of the most famous spots in the entire park. Just past Zabriskie, we're taking a fun little detour along another one of the few unpaved roads inside the park that is currently open. 20 Mule Team Canyon is a rough drive that winds through colorful, eroded badlands. This one-way road starts out fairly tame, but it becomes a bit of a roller coaster the further you go. And while this drive is great fun in my Kia Sportage, I would not recommend heading out on this road in a low clearance vehicle, because once you start, you are committed to this drive. If the scene surrounding you looks familiar, Star Wars: Return of the Jedi was actually filmed in this location. As you reach the end of this winding road and return to the pavement, the adventure isn't over, because in between Zabriskie Point and the turnoff for Dante's View, there is more road construction, and this past opening week of Death Valley, there was one-lane, one-way traffic with a pilot car directing you. Active road construction was ongoing during my recent trip to Death Valley, so obeying all traffic signs and driving safe is incredibly important. The pilot car led us all the way to the turnoff for Dante's View Road, and once we were actually on Dante's View Road, the drive up to this famous viewpoint was winding and steep, but very clean, easy, and beautiful. There's nothing quite like driving around that final curve and looking over the cliff edge down at Badwater Basin below. Viewing Badwater Basin, the lowest point in North America, from Dante's View far above is always a treat, but right now is incredible because a temporary lake is filling Badwater Basin below, something you'd almost never see here in Death Valley, and the people walking out on the sat flats look almost like ants. They're so tiny against the vast waters here. On clear days, from here at Dante's View, you can see Badwater Basin, the lowest point in North America, and Mount Whitney, our highest peak, all at the same time. And it's incredible to see the water here now and compare it to earlier, January, when I visited, and everything was completely dry. I do have a full blog post and YouTube video on Dante's View. I'll link it in the description of this video. This is a wonderful spot to visit, and particularly right now with the lake, but we're gonna head to another spot, the Badwater Basin, to see this water up close next. I'm glad I wasn't in a rush to get to Badwater Basin on opening day, because at the base of Dante's View Road, the traffic stop was only letting a certain number of cars through at a time. So cars had to wait for up to or over half an hour in this area to be escorted along the Furnace Creek Wash area. And this section of the drive had more visible damage to the paved road and ongoing road work than any other area during my visit over the last week. Before reaching Zabriskie Point, our one-lane pilot car escort ended, and we were on our way along Badwater Road to Badwater Basin. As you're driving a Badwater Road on the way to Badwater Basin, your eyes aren't deceiving you. It's not a mirage. Water has filled the basin, creating a temporary lake here. I always love heading to Badwater Basin, but this trip was extra special because as I approached the parking area, I knew there would be a massive lake waiting for me. And I do think it's important to note that Badwater Road closes here at mile 17, just at the exit of the Badwater Basin parking and viewing area, so you can't take the road any further. Over the past week, I visited Badwater Basin in the morning. I also visited in the afternoon. I made sure to stay for sunset, and I captured the night sky here, as well as the early morning colors before sunrise. I hope you'll enjoy seeing how the scenery changes here throughout the day. However, one thing that was notably missing from my visit were the famous honeycomb hexagon salt formations, which were covered completely by water. The salt formations here are so white right now, it actually looks like snow, and it's incredible to watch the sunset because Death Valley is an international dark sky park, meaning once the sun has disappeared, you will see more stars than you can possibly imagine, and right now it's incredible to see them reflecting on the water. As sun begins to rise, you'll notice that the hills light up in vibrant pinks and orange colors here too. While the sun technically rises before 7 a.m. right now, you have to wait until after 9 a.m. to actually see it because the cliffs surrounding Badwater Basin are so high, but the reflective light here in the morning is beautiful with the water. Sunset is definitely a popular time here at Badwater Basin, and with the water flowing, it's incredible to see the colors. I set up my camera and was able to capture the night sky, which is always beautiful, and as the sun rises, this is my favorite time at Death Valley. It goes from pitch black to a slightly lighter hue, as you can just barely see the mountains reflecting off the water currently. The vibrant colors that light up before the sun rises are always my favorite. And of course, waiting for sunrise, you'll get rich colors all across Badwater Basin. It was incredible to be here Monday morning before sunrise. In fact, I had this entire spot to myself. Not one other car was in the parking lot, and that was a first for me. I thoroughly enjoyed these views, and I hope you do too. The last time I saw a lake fill this basin was the storms of 2019, and the water is even more impressive now. If you are hoping to see this natural phenomenon for yourself, you may want to plan a visit soon, as the lake could completely disappear within the next week or two. Almost every Death Valley trip, I have to visit Badwater Basin. I've been here when the floods have filled this basin up with water. I've been here when the mountains are snow-capped, and I've seen some of my most incredible sunrises right at this spot. I have multiple Badwater Basin blog posts and YouTube videos, so I'll make sure to link them in the description of this video if you want a more in-depth look at this incredible area Death Valley has to offer. One last thing I think is important to note before we head out from Badwater Basin is if you visit now, normally you could walk out well over a mile on these South Flats, but only a fourth of a mile is accessible before the water, and it is very muddy, so be prepared to clean off your shoes if you explore here. It's always a bit difficult to leave Badwater Basin, but we have a few more fun stops to enjoy inside the park. So let's take Badwater Road back to Natural Bridge Road. Now, this is a 1.5 mile rough gravel road, which leads to a wonderful hike. And if you saw my video on Thursday, I promised to share a special spot to view the temporary Badwater Lake And this is that spot. The parking lot for Natural Bridge Trailhead is a great spot to see Badwater Basin from above. Natural Bridge Trail is a gem inside Death Valley. This rocky 1-mile hike leads you to a stunning geological formation. It's incredible to see once the bridge comes into view. Now, this impressive bridge formation rises over 35 feet above the canyon floor, and it stretches across the entire canyon. While it could be tempting to want to go explore, it's important to remember that climbing these canyon walls is strictly prohibited, so stay to the lower trail here. After you pass under the bridge, you'll come across a waterfall which is long since gone dry before reaching the end of this trail and its beautiful rock wall formation and heading back the way you came. Driving the gravel Natural Bridge Road back down to Badwater Road gives you great views of the temporary lake from above, and soon we're heading off on our next adventure. I didn't see any information online about Devil's Golf Course being open, but I was pleasantly surprised to see cars driving here this week. The 1-mile Salt Pool Road leads to close-up views of a spot which was once the site of Lake Manly, but now it's covered in jagged salt formations. And I do have a complete YouTube video and blog post on this spot. I'll link it in the description of this video. Another spot that is always popular with park guests is Artist Drive Loop. This winding 9-mile paved one-way road hugs the jagged hills with some of the most spectacularly colorful rock formations in all of Death Valley. The first pull-out parking area you reach isn't the official Artist Point, but it does offer some great rock formation views. Continuing on the one-lane, one-way road, it's in surprisingly good condition considering how many other roads inside the park are severely damaged from Hurricane Hilary. Now, it is important to note that along this drive, vehicles or RVs larger than 25 feet are strictly prohibited due to the narrow ups and downs you encounter throughout this drive. Reaching the official Artist's Palette is a highlight of this journey. While you can absolutely enjoy the colorful rock formations from your car, you can also head out and explore them up close if it's not too hot out. I do have a full Artist's Palette blog post and YouTube video. I'll link it in the description of this video below if you'd like a more in-depth look at this colorful spot. Heading back on the road, once you've had your fill of exploring the colorful rocks here, the drive continues to be very windy as you weave in and out of the canyon on your way along Artist Drive all the way back down to Badwater Road. Our final stop on this Death Valley adventure is going to be Golden Canyon. The paved parking lot is located directly off Badwater Road, and there are restrooms located at the trailhead here. From Golden Canyon, you're able to head out on multiple hikes, but please remember it's not wise to hike after 10 a.m. on hot Death Valley days here. The landscape was named for the gold-colored hills, and the winding, narrow canyons offer options from the easy 1-mile Golden Canyon hike to the strenuous, full 7-mile Zabriskie Point loop. I definitely recommend exploring this area, even if it's just for a short stroll, but the tall canyon walls can create a bit of a labyrinth here, so always plan ahead with knowledgeable navigation. Whether you're planning your own Death Valley trip or you can't make it to the park in person, I hope joining me for a virtual visit gave you a taste of all the roads and trails that are currently open and closed inside the park. And while I love sharing my personal adventures with you, please always remember to visit the official Death Valley National Park website for the most accurate and up-to-date information before your trip, especially now as the park is just reopening. Thank you so much for joining me this week inside Death Valley National Park. And for more detailed information, I have an entire Death Valley section filled with over a dozen dedicated blog posts, as well as a Death Valley travel guide on my website, flyingdawnmarie.com. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. And until next week, I hope you find adventure and encouragement wherever you go.